Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Majors Live, episode 327 here on TMSNX Radio, themajors.net. I am Adam Hernandez, and with me is Dorf with his fancy new microphone all the way down in South Bend. Dorf, how you doing, man?
I am okay, and you make it sound like I'm really all that far away. If you take it by the crow flies, I'm really only like 120 miles. It's not that far away.
Yeah, it's not that far, but he's not here anymore, so.
Hey, like we talked about before we went in here, I'll be back in town a couple times next month. We'll see if we can do something live.
Yeah, so. Anyways, though, we're back again. We've been off for quite a little bit, but we're back this week. No Shawn tonight. Hopefully he'll be back next week as well. But anyways, let's go ahead and get down to it. I want to start off with this. We got our big topic about the draft coming up in just a little bit, but I did want to touch on this Chris Long interview that he did. Who did he do this interview with? He did it on the Dan Patrick Show.
He was on Rich Eisen today too, by the way.
Was he on Rich Eisen today? Yeah. I'm referencing though something that happened on the Dan Patrick Show yesterday, and he talks about marijuana usage in the NFL. We're going to approach this from two different fronts. First of all, his comments that he made about getting around the drug testing when it comes to marijuana in the NFL. And this is what he said, because he says he used marijuana in the NFL while he was in the NFL for essentially his entire career. And when he was on the Dan Patrick Show, he went on and he said how he got around the testing. And this is what he says. In that month or two that you stop, you're going to reach for the sleeping pills. You're going to reach for the painkillers. You're going to reach for... Let me see here. Is that the right... I don't know if that's the right quote.
Uh-oh.
Okay, no, never mind. I got it.
You got it.
So how did Long beat the NFL's drug test? Simple. He noted the league only tests for the drug once a year, a predetermined date so players could just quit before the test just to clear the drug out of their body. So I didn't know that. I thought that the NFL, when it came to marijuana, tested all year long, and it was going to.
It actually only tests you all year round if you're in like the drug of abuse program. Like guys that recently that come to my mind that have been on that part is Pat McAfee, believe it or not, and special teamers both around, and Matt Prater actually when he was with the Broncos because he was a drunk at the time.
Yeah.
He had to get tested regularly for alcohol. That being Matt Prater and Pat McAfee because woke up in what was it in a canal in Indianapolis. That mugshot's the best. But anyway, so you only get tested on a regular and random basis if you're in the like rehab program per se. Otherwise, you get like tested randomly once during like training camp, and that's at that point like if you're using marijuana for like pain relief or whatever during the season, you're like weaned off at that point. You don't necessarily need it for the pain relief part during the summer. So because you're not like actively in, full on game combat or whatever you want to call it. So, you just get clean for training camp and then you can pretty much toke up whenever you want during the year.
Yeah. And I mean, how do they do it? Do you know how they do it? Do you know if it's a hair sample that they take, or is it urine?
I'm pretty sure it's pee.
Is it pee?
I'm pretty sure it's urine. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you have to pee in a cup.
Because I always heard that the hair test is always,
Oh, the hair test is until if you've smoked it, or consumed pretty much anything that includes like what you ate during that period, while your hair is still on your head or whatever, it'll be in your hair. Where it's detectable in your hair, but like in your pee, like weed, I believe, like is out of your system in less than a week.
Yeah. Anyways, though, I mean, judging from how the NFL goes about their business when they test for marijuana, I mean, they only test for it at the beginning of the year, once a year.
Unless, of course, you get caught with your hand in the cookie jar.
Yeah,
you only got to pass once.
But you know what? It seems like it seems like this goes to show how important marijuana is. I mean, on the surface, from a fan perspective, it seems like it's more important than what it actually is. Because the NFL does take this stance. If for some reason they do test you and marijuana does come up, I mean, they could be testing for something totally different, and if it comes to the surface that I do toke up on weed throughout the season, then they're going to do something about it. They'll suspend you. They'll do something. But the non-public policy or their non-public approach to marijuana usage, I mean, do you think that it's not totally out of the realm of possibility that the NFL could, in some sense, make marijuana usage legal in the league? I mean, simply because, I mean, it's hearing about players using it and people using it, especially players after their playing days are over, using marijuana as a way to cut down on the painkillers. And we all know how much trouble the NFL has been in when it comes to players after their careers are over. We've heard the litigation, we've heard the lawsuits, and so on and so forth. Do you think this is something that maybe the players union and the NFL could come to terms with as far as, general usage amongst its players?
I believe weed has been effectively decriminalized in the NFL right now.
Uh-huh.
I think it will be formally no longer tested for in the next CBA. I would put the odds at, spitball on it, 65, 70% chance that it will be no longer a drug that the NFL gives a shit about whenever the next CBA goes into effect. Realistically, especially when you hear about, I don't know, not a lot of this news isn't necessarily recent, the amount of times that guys, the horror stories about just coming in on game day and just the lines of syringes with injectable opiates lined up for guys to be injected with, whether it be Toradol or whatever else, on game day, just so they can go out there and be numb and continue to play. If that kind of stuff, Toradol is something that was originally developed for post surgery that used maybe twice, probably only once, and these guys are getting a shot in potentially multiple locations on their body, once a week. That's incredibly not only bad for you, but it's incredibly hard on your kidneys and your liver, and you really shouldn't be doing that. You're really only supposed to probably use that stuff maybe twice ever, and you're having it 15 times a year probably. If marijuana is able to, I am still, this is a discussion for another time, but I'm still not totally on board that marijuana is consequence free. But at the same time, is it significantly better than an opiate-based painkiller? There's absolutely no doubt in my mind that that's the case. Now, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a medical professional, but reality, pain, especially when it comes from injury management's perspective, is what you can make yourself mentally be able to play through. And if marijuana, without withdrawal symptoms or anything like that, if you're able to use that instead of an opioid-based painkiller, which has not only the basic symptom of making you not being able to take a shit, but is also incredibly addictive and hard on your your kidneys and liver. I'm totally on board. If that's what works for these guys, there's no reason they shouldn't be allowed to do it, especially with the wave of states across this the United States allowing marijuana to be available medically or recreationally. I think that's something that the players throughout the league should be able to take advantage of.
It just seems like a no-brainer at this point. I mean,
well, the NFL has effectively made it a no-brainer at this point because they publicize like, all right, as long as you pass your test in training camp, we really don't care. It's effectively been, from the league perspective, decriminalized. Just don't fail your drug test in training camp, and you can toke up whenever you want during the year.
Yeah, I'm gonna put that. There's the picture of.
That's the Pat McAfee waking up drunk in a canal picture.
You said that he did a podcast on this as well.
Oh, he's done a whole thing on like what happened that night, and also like how he essentially was perpetually high and continues to be perpetually high during his career in the NFL.
Yeah, I'm going to say, how often does he talk about this sort of thing? I mean, not this, but that night.
I haven't caught any of his recent episodes, Now that I've relocated to South Bend here, my commute went from like an hour and 10 minutes a day each way to 5. Uh-huh. So my podcast diet has been significantly reduced, and unfortunately, the Pat McAfee show didn't make the cut. So I have not kept up with on it recently.
You're kind of in Pat McAfee country, though. Kind of, sort of.
Yeah, I'm about just over 2 hours from Indianapolis now.
Yeah.
I think I technically fall in the Chicago media market, believe it or not.
Yeah, which is crazy.
Believe it or not, I did the MLB.TV trial subscription because I was like, oh yeah, baseball, but like I'm in the blackout zone of both Chicago teams in Detroit. It's bullshit.
That is so fucked up.
Absolute bullshit.
I don't understand how that works out. I mean, you got to throw the people of South Bend a bone, right? I mean, don't you, MLB? I mean,
there's nothing like this. This is a Cubs town because you have the Cubs low A affiliate here. Like, you can't go to a bar around this town without, like, it looks like it's a Cubs bar in downtown Chicago. This is a Cubs town. Why are the Tigers blacked out? This is BS.
Yeah, I don't get it. Anyways, let's go ahead and move along, though, because you brought up something that was very interesting the other day. It was actually late last week, Dorf. As we know...
Just a random Facebook message.
Just a random Facebook message to me. And this is right in the wake of the NBA draft. Or not the NBA draft, but the NBA lottery. Draft is coming up. Yep. And the Pelicans ended up winning the lottery, and they're probably going to draft Zion. And that's what
if they were smart, they wouldn't.
Well, I mean, they are. And
if they were smart, they'd draft Cam Reddish, but that's not what we're talking about tonight.
No, I mean, and we were going to talk about the draft last week and whether or not, Zion's presence on the Pelicans is going to change Anthony Davis's mind at all. But again, that was last week. This is this week. Dorf brought something up, and he thought that to eliminate tanking, because that's what teams do. That's what teams do, whether you are an NHL team, an MLB team, an NBA team, or an NFL team. You tank. You tank to get that top draft pick. You tank to get more ping pong balls.
The only league that doesn't tank intentionally is the NFL, because you really realistically turn over your roster every 3 years, regardless of success. So the NFL is the only league that you really don't. I mean, the only like really intentional tank you've seen in the last decade was when the Colts sucked for luck, and it hasn't worked out for them because they don't have a championship in that time period. Mm-mm. And the guy that they cut to make room for Andrew Luck does have one.
Yeah. Yep. Anyways, Dorf, why don't you go ahead and take the lead on this one, because it was your proposed idea on getting rid of the draft altogether.
So, specifically from the Major League Baseball perspective, there is a huge problem with teams tanking. You have the bottom third of the – you could arguably the bottom third of the league. The teams like the Tigers and the Reds, the last couple of years, and the Astros before they had their good run here, who fully embraced the suck. Mm-hmm. They intentionally were not competitive for 162 games on purpose because it maximized their draft value. They didn't spend any money so they could bank it up and strategically spend when the time was right. And they had no incentive to go for it all every year. And, like the Philadelphia 76ers, they were transparent about this fact. They were like, hey, guys, we're going to blow for a couple years. And they didn't use the term the process. But the Astros were the MLB's worst team for going on 5 or 6 years. But guess what? They now look like an unstoppable force. I think they've won like 14 of the last 15 games. Mm-hmm. And they got a World Series out of it. And we're pretty close to a second one. And, are the odds-on favorite currently to win this year. If you are a team perpetually like the Oakland A's, currently like the Detroit Tigers, currently like the Miami Marlins, who are it's embarrassing how bad they're starting off, their 25-man roster is and how little they've spent on it. If you want teams and incentivize teams, this is also a big problem in the NBA where you've got the Phoenix Suns who have no plans on winning for the next 5 years. And Dallas, too, for that matter. And hell, you could argue Orlando. But if you don't like that don't be don't hate the player, hate the game. Mm-hmm. It is a fact of the matter, the most efficient way, the most effective way to guarantee a window of success is to suck balls for a decade. Well, not necessarily a decade, but 5 to 7 years. With that being in mind, that isn't, that is best for the franchise if you're going for it all and you aren't just in it for the money as an owner. If you want to, as a fan, to see the best product on the court, on the field, on the ice, year over year over year, and you don't have to endure prolonged periods of suffering as a fan, get rid of the draft. It disincentivizes sucking on purpose. Because if everybody essentially, instead of you replace the entry draft with a amateur free agency, much like in baseball the international prospects are, you have to compete, not only financially, but being for the best situation for the prospect. Ultimately, if you're worried about competitive balance, well, why wouldn't everybody just sign with the Yankees? I'm not advocating, I would advocate actually for the MLB to institute a actual hard salary cap and a salary floor. But I would also get rid of the draft, and it's open season on everybody, and I would also, specifically for baseball, significantly shorten club control. You wouldn't see Vlad Guerrero Jr. wasting his time in the minor leagues for the last year and a half. Vlad Guerrero Jr. would have made his major if this system was in place where it wasn't incentivizing the teams to drag their fucking feet and play the service time game with Vlad Guerrero Jr. Vlad Guerrero Jr. would have made his major league debut in 19 and probably would have hit 20 homers last year. And probably would have been a positive influence on the Blue Jays. You wouldn't see teams dinking around and manipulating service time with their best players. It would force the teams to, not only when you eliminate the draft, but you shorten the service time or the club ownership of players, it would force teams to hurry up and get the best players to, put the best players on the field now, because they know damn well if they don't hurry up and do it now, they'll lose them before their prime is in place. Mm-hmm. Now, the biggest reason that this will never happen, specifically in the MLB, is the MLBPA.
Well, hold on a second, Dorf. Before we get to that, obviously there's it's an interesting idea, and it's one that I think is worth looking into if you are any one of these professional sports leagues, whether you're the NHL, whether you're the NBA, NFL, MLB, so on and so forth. But obviously one of the biggest concerns is going to be that competitive balance. I mean, because a big problem, specifically what we see in the NBA right now, are players going to teams who or they could form that
Okay.
that unit, And
the solution to that is like ultimately you get rid of specifically the NBA, you get rid of the individual max contract.
Okay.
Guys are going to want to go places and then get paid.
Okay, but what's going to
you still have a team hard cap. You still have the team hard cap in the NBA. However, you get rid of the, if somebody wants to spend $45 million a year on LeBron James, let him. If somebody wants to spend $70 million a year on LeBron James, let him. Ultimately, you still have to put a team on the floor that's salary cap compliant, with the NBA being what, roughly like, oh God, if I'm wrong on this, don't be mad at me, but like the hard cap is effectively like 120 million ish. I may be wrong on that.
We don't have Shawn here to look it up real quick.
Yeah, so. Right. Hey, Shawn, I hope you're doing all right out there, buddy, if you're listening here tonight. Anyway.
Yeah, can you check that hard cap for us, too, while you're at it?
Anyway. Ultimately, guys young in their career, the young and upcoming.
It's $99 million.
Is it $99 million? The hard cap? Million. The soft cap?
They have a soft cap. They don't have a hard cap. They have a soft cap.
Okay.
So the hard cap is the NFL.
So if somebody wants to spend 50% of the soft cap dollars on LeBron James and still have to spend, split that last 50% amongst 12 other guys.
They have a $119.2 million luxury tax threshold.
Okay. With that in mind, let them. The teams that don't have or aren't able to acquire the high-priced veteran free agents will be able to spend more dollars on the young talent. Guys that are good and young and want to get paid. It will distribute, instead of teams like the Golden State Warriors, who are essentially able to carry effectively four max contract players. That being, Draymond Green, because he signed his max extension early. It's technically a max deal, even though it was 5 years and like 80-something million. Durant, Thompson, and Curry. You allow a team, like a small market team, to still be cap compliant. Say like the Minnesota Timberwolves a couple years ago. I could have went and spent, hey, Kevin, instead of you going to Golden State and championship chasing for 20-something million a year, I'll give you 50. Come here. I think Kevin Durant for an extra $25 million would be able to put up with Minnesota winners, or Detroit with, I don't know, you pick a free agent. Oh, it doesn't quite have the social life of Los Angeles or Miami, but you know what? I can afford with my individual salary cap. I can give you $35 million this year. Or hell, there's no intentional tanking for lottery position for the privilege of drafting Zion Williamson. Zion is going to be able to sign with whoever he wants. And guess what? It's up to Zion whether he values at the beginning of his career winning a championship right away, where he could take $800,000 and go sit on the bench of the, or be a contributor for Golden State. Or he can go get a, $20 million a year deal to go play for the Pelicans. It's up to him. And each team would change the incentive structure instead of being all about controlling costs and winning at the right time to being the right spot for each individual prospect every year. Instead of, we just got to, suck for luck or, tank for, Kyrie Irving or whatever, or, I don't know, you name the euphemism here. But instead, our incentive is to go for it every year, to spend strategically, to, if we don't think we're that good this year, we'll save $25 million for the next, coming of Jesus Christ that's going to be, I hate draft eligible or entry eligible, let's call it, in the next draft. Because, and if you're going to be bad and you're going to consistently tank if you're a prospect coming out, unless of course they're going to give you buku bucks, like veteran mid-level, 15-20 million dollar a year as a rookie,
Mm-hmm.
why would you want to go there? The only thing is the players associations are literally in existence to maximize the revenue of the veteran players. This would drive more of the dollars spent down to the young guys. And that's why I think it will never happen. The MLB, it would be incredibly smart for, I think, for the MLB guys. This is even before we get into the discussion of paying the minor league baseball players better. But there would be no incentive to suck. There would be the incentive to go for it every year. There would be actually the incentive to pay veterans who are just slightly better than the young guys. Because you know what? Sucking for draft position will no longer matter because there's not a draft.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be the best situation. If say, I don't know who the next top prospect is coming out, who would you rather sign with? If you're Bob Smitherman, the next top shortstop prospect, he's the number one prospect in the next graduating class. I don't know. I don't know who that is. I don't pay that close attention. Would you rather sign with, and this is entirely up to the individual player, would you rather sign with, say, the Miami Marlins, who are going to have the first pick in this upcoming draft? Because, they're the number one slot. You might, under the old system, you get the most money with them. Or would you rather be like, well, you know what? Let's take a peek at, let's say, the Seattle Mariners. Their shortstop situation is kind of iffy, or the I don't know who's a team with an aging shortstop. Help me out here. Philadelphia. Let's say Philadelphia. Gene Segura's getting kind of old. He's probably going to age out about the time I'm ready for big time. Would I rather sign there because I have a shorter path to the big leagues and I have a shorter path to getting, to the arbitration system? I don't know. That's up to you. And if from an agent's perspective, if you're repping these amateur prospects, it's all about maximizing your financial value. More money will be spent. I mean, even in the MLB, if you want to still cap the amount of money you can spend on that year's entry class or draft class or whatever you want to call them, that's fine. However, we haven't even gotten to the part where, is the draft even technically legal under U.S. labor law? But I think it would totally flip the incentive structure where every team would be incentivized to go for it all every year, or at least not intentionally be awful.
Yeah, and obviously there's some caveat, there's some requirements that need to be put in place in order for this to work, and obviously the biggest one is having a salary cap in all leagues. For instance, like you were saying, if Major League Baseball was going to adopt this,
the only major league that doesn't have one is Major League Baseball.
It's Major League Baseball, yeah.
It could easily be done. The only thing is, you currently have the Marlins spending almost nothing.
Yeah.
There's Dodgers, Yankees, Red Sox. We're spending over $200 million. I think there's another team or two that's over $200 million.
Yeah.
I think the Astros are actually pretty close too. But anyway, if you say if you wanted to adjust it back to this year's numbers, put a hard cap of 190 and a floor of 70% that value. So 190, let's just make it 200 for round math. 200 with a hard floor of 140. Or 120. Let's say a hard floor of everybody had to spend at least 120 but under 140. The overall salary pool will grow. It will incentivize because there's no, advantage to suck for Andrew Luck or, whatever the equivalent for baseball is this year. Mm-hmm. Or, lose for Bryce Harper or, lose for Hughes was the NHL one. Yeah, the NHL. Because that incentive is gone, it will not only having a hard floor in your league require teams to spend money each and every year, it will incentivize teams because, fuck it. We have to spend this money to be cap compliant. We might as well go for it this year. There's no reason to suck. It doesn't improve really our draft stock. Wouldn't we be more attractive by being a team that's more ready to win, or a team that has an opportunity for the right prospect, or, and at the same time, from the amateur prospects perspective, why should you not be like any other worker or laborer in the U.S. labor market? Why shouldn't you be able to go pick where you want to work? I understand some people are have contracts and they can't leave for X amount of years or X amount of months or whatever. I understand that's a normal part. Not everybody's an at-will employee.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, this idea that I get to draft you, you don't have a choice on which city you get to go work in or which organization or company you get to work for. And I definitely own your rights only if as the organization is okay with it, for up to 10 years. That is just crazy. I have an optional renewal, cancelable at any time contract with you, which you can opt out of. Service time in minor leagues, I believe, counts for half of major league service time. So I, in theory, as an MLB organization, own you for up to 9 years. Hell, it could be longer than that. How is that okay? I, as the player, can't be like, you know what? I don't want to play for the Marlins anymore. And you can't you can't quit your job. I understand, if I'm going to give you a signing bonus as a prospect, I want some sort of level of commitment out of that. But at the same time, I'm going to give you that signing bonus, and then I'm going to intentionally suppress your earning power. Because, you know what? I just don't think we're ready to compete this year. I hate to be like, well, that's un-American, but it is. This shouldn't be okay. I think the only reason it is okay in this American society is that, they're making, over $1 million a year to play a kid's game. And that's the only reason Joe Blow Schmo American doesn't give a shit.
Well, yeah, that's...
And quite frankly, I can't blame him. But, But at the same... I got a $6 million signing bonus as a high schooler to play a kid's game. So, blow me. I make $40,000 a year, on an assembly line. I mean,
that's exactly what it is. I mean, people... And again, I don't blame some people for thinking this way, but, sports isn't seen as real life. It's seen as something that's fantasy. It's seen as something that's just purely entertainment for people. And some of them think about the salaries, some of them don't. The people who don't think about the salaries are...
Well, you got to think about most of these prospects. This isn't unique for them. Their signing bonus or that rookie contract in the cases of the NFL and the NBA, that is life-changing money for the immediate family.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you look at the specific demographics of the NBA entry guys. Most of those guys come from nothing. That $3 to $8 million, $3 to $15 million deal they signed as rookies.
Mm-hmm.
That is life-changing money for them and their family. The NFL, the guys drafted in the first round, they're making at least $15 million guaranteed. They could just show up for work for the next 4 years, make $15 billion no matter what. MLB, guys drafted in the first round, they're making a couple $1 million in the signing bonus. That's life-changing money, no matter what. If you want to incentivize teams to put the best players on the field and make the best product for you as the fan, you should want to get rid of the draft. Same thing with the NFL. We haven't even really touched on the NFL at all here. There would be no incentive to, you know what, we're playing for next year. No, go for it every year. It'd be incredibly interesting for you have the top quarterback prospect coming out. Well, in historically, he would have gone to the worst team. What team is a QB? But you know what? If I'm New England, I could be able to spend a little bit extra money because you know what? I know Tom Brady's only going to play 2 more years. I'd like, Trevor Lawrence, for example, who is not even draft eligible till the year after this. Trevor Lawrence, you know what? Tom Brady's going to play 1 or 2 more years. I'm going to spend a little bit more money than the next guy. You know what? You may not be able to play right away, but I'm going to give you an additional $10 million over, the Dolphins per se, where you might be able to play with the Dolphins right away this year, but I'll give you an extra $10 million guaranteed now for you to ride the pine the next 2 years and learn under Tom Brady and be our quarterback and parent. And that should be okay because you know what? The other teams in the league should be all right with that as long as there's a hard cap. Because you know what? If they're spending money on that prospect that they don't need, that's money they don't spend on players that will be playing right now. And that should increase parity. Everybody should be happy with that. I understand the unions won't be happy with that because, money from veterans, but you know what? As a fan, a league, and ownership, you should be all about this.
Dorf, what happened today? I mean, because you brought something up earlier, something that happened today that totally supports this within the Major League Baseball.
Major League Baseball. So the last year's 8th overall pick is named Carter Stewart. He's a pitcher, high school pitcher. He didn't sign with the Braves after being drafted 8th overall. Mm-hmm. Instead of signing, he instead went to JUCO for a year and actually just signed a 6-year, $7 million deal in Japan, which will get him to not only about – the reason it happened is because he was probably going to get about a $5 million signing bonus roughly. However, something in his physical pre-contract signing scared the Braves a little bit, and they knocked down his offer. So Scott Boras, being the smart agent that he is, said, fuck you, and went and sent him to community college for that next year. He had really good numbers again, and he just got him a professional contract in Japan. Because Japan, when it comes from Major League service time, Major League Baseball teams own your rights for up to 6 years of your Major League Baseball career. That doesn't include your minor league time. I think that it counts for about a 1-to-2 ratio. Every day you earn in the minor league is worth a half a day in the major leagues. Mm-hmm. Of service time, if I remember correctly. I might be wrong on that. He got a 6-year, $7 million deal to pitch in Japan, which is essentially he's going to be a major league free agent at 25 years old, which is probably 2 or 3 years earlier than you would reach free agency as a Major League Baseball player. And he's going to get $5 million more guaranteed than he would have from the Atlanta Braves. So he's, and on top of it, if you look at, even if he was one of the best players in the league and he made a super fast progression through the minor leagues, he's still a couple $1 million right on this deal. This is the perfect example of what would happen in Major League Baseball if the draft went away. They would be forced to compete for prospects, each team, internationally. You know what? If Carter Stewart, that being the guy in question here, the Braves draftee / not signee, he theoretically can make it to free agency at age 25 instead of probably age 28. If you look at the recent history of guys getting free agent contracts, nobody's paying anybody that's more than 28 years old. He's now being able to take advantage of free agency, potentially get a free agent contract at age 25, where you're theoretically paying for 3 or 4 years of his prime, which teams are more willing to shell out bigger money for. Mm-hmm. And that's not only a win-win for the player, it also could be a win-win for a league. It will, instead of, like I mentioned with Vlad Guerrero Jr. is the perfect example. There's no reason Vlad Guerrero Jr. shouldn't have been in the big leagues in the middle of last year. He made his debut in May of this year. Because the Blue Jays are cheap asses and are worried about maximizing his length of service with them. instead of putting the best team on the field. And that's a shame. He should have made his major league debut the day they traded Josh Donaldson. Instead, you didn't get to see him till May this year.
Mm-hmm.
So, I know why it's not going to happen. Doesn't mean it shouldn't.
Well, not only that too, Dorf. It just seems like you look at the immediate reasoning for something like this to happen, and you touched on it just a second ago, especially with this whole MLB thing with the Atlanta Braves. Is that
and quite honestly, good for Carter Stewart, man. Good for you, man.
No, absolutely, good for him. But there's none of that immediate competition for these prospects. At least not the domestic prospects.
Well, and at the same time, like the way the MLB has historically tried to handle this is the Rule 5 draft.
Uh-huh.
You can't stash guys forever without either committing to putting them on the 40-man roster, which entitles them to a little bit more pay. Now, nowhere close to big league money if they're not on the big league roster, but like it gets them a little bit more money, and it forces teams to commit to them.
Now, this is something that all leagues would have to.
It's not a big enough incentive. I mean, look at the guys that are taking the Rule 5 draft. How many of them are actually turn out being above average major league players?
Not many.
Almost none.
Yeah, not many at all.
I think since the Rule 5 draft is instated, I think there's been only a couple guys that have been All-Stars, and I think there's actually one Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
I forget who it is.
But my point, Dorf, is that the NFL has zero reason to do this, aside from making things more interesting and going about their own
they'd have
process.
to give up the 3-day April festivities for the NFL draft, but instead they could trade it for like months of drama about where is the top Alabama prospect going to sign with what's the best situation for let's just look at this current draft class. Where's the best situation for Quinnen Williams to make an immediate impact / get paid, and what is Quinnen Williams what does the top quarterback prospect value? Is it money right away, or is it the best situation for long-term success for or long-term value? Is Kyler Murray going to go to the Cardinals where he can start right away, or does he go to the Patriots where he can make some less money, but he's set up for more long-term success? And that kind of drama and media attention from an NFL league's perspective is attractive, because instead of a 3-day bonanza of the NFL draft, which is exciting in its own right, you could have months and months and months of constant juicy rumors where the 4-letter network, Fox, everybody and their brother is doing 3/4 of their show about where Tua Tagovailoa is going to sign, or Trevor Lawrence in 2 years, or Quinnen Williams, or Kyler Murray. Oh, just like Kyler Murray, is he going to stick with baseball, or is he going to go play football, or all of that? You can have that year around,
and then it comes to a head with a National Signing Day type of program, like they do with college.
College, yeah. You could have that.
But what I was getting at though with the NFL is that when I'm talking about that incentive, or the threat that some of these other leagues undergo when it comes to prospects, like I was saying, the domestic versus the international, is that the NFL doesn't have to compete for prospects. If you play NCAA football,
your only hope of making any sort of significant. I mean, you can make about like $50 or $60 a year playing in Canada, but that's you make less as a practice squad player in the NFL, or as a practice squad player in the NFL.
And we've seen how these second tier leagues go in the United States. I mean, the Alliance of American Football didn't even last a season. They filed for bankruptcy halfway through, not even halfway through the year. I mean, you have the XF.
I'm not convinced. We could do a whole nother show on that. I'm not convinced that wasn't a scam.
Oh, really? Well, now,
By the majority owner of the league, I'm not convinced that wasn't his
well,
plan the entire time.
hold on. I'm intrigued now. I'm intrigued. Can you give me the Cliff's Notes version?
Long story short, the announcement that the league was folding was made, and the minority owners, including Jim Irsay of the Colts, came out and said, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! We weren't on board with this. This wasn't our plan. We were in this through the expected losses for the next several years, but the majority owner said, fuck it, I'm out."
Uh-huh.
I'm not convinced it wasn't a ploy to take a bunch of investor money, essentially launder it through a bunch of companies and other entities owned by the majority owner, and to bail and declare bankruptcy before they got in too deep.
Oh, okay. Maybe
I may be wrong. I may be entirely wrong, but I'm not convinced.
We definitely may have to touch on this. Maybe we'll touch on this a little bit more next week because I'm fully intrigued by hearing more of Dorf's theory on this. But I mean, you have the XFL.
Let's put it
up.
this way: there was no revenue model or business plan where they would have been in the black at the point that they folded. There's no way in hell they had a realistic expectation of being profitable when they did, or being in a better financial position that they were when they did. There's no way in hell that they would have been started that league if they thought they would have been more successful than they immediately were, which tells me the majority ownership in that wasn't actually in it to make it work, and they were just there for a quick payday.
And not only that, Dorf, you would have think that they had somewhat of the NFL's blessing with all of this because you could see it working out into bigger things because they were on the NFL Network. They were on the NFL Network.
They had a CB. I mean, they were on CBS too.
Yeah, they were on CBS also. I mean that you get the best of both worlds there. You get the NFL name associated with you in some sense or another. And then you have a big network like CBS also backing you as well. And you're absolutely right. At that point, there was no way that they were going to be profitable at that point.
Well,
so yeah.
And realistically, most like real small businesses, like their path to profitability, unless of course you're in the alcohol business, is like conservatively 2 years.
Yeah.
You hope to break even at the year 2 mark, and then you start, making mega profits in year 3, 4, 5. They didn't even make it through 1 calendar year. There's no way in hell that they thought they were going to be profitable at essentially what effectively was the 6-month mark.
Yeah.
And they were just like, oh, we are so behind targets that fuck it, we're out. There's no way that was legitimately on the left in my mind. I would have to dig into it deeper because I'm going to fully admit I haven't done the deep dive. There's no way in hell that anybody, especially as an investor that's not the majority owner, would have agreed to that if that was the understanding that if we're this far behind, if we're on schedule at month 6, we're fucking bailing.
Okay, well, I want to take a look at. I want to talk about this more next week, possibly, because it's interesting. It's an interesting notion. It's interesting.
It just doesn't make business sense.
No, it doesn't. But back to the original point here about we have the XFL coming out next year, and with what you just said, I mean, maybe the XFL is going to be somewhat successful the second time around. I doubt it. It just doesn't seem like there's room in the United States for another NFL league. Nor does this.
I totally think there is. You just can't put it directly in the same year. If you do it all summer long to fill that gap when Major League Baseball is playing by itself, start the league right now. The NHL is winding down. The NBA is winding down. Major League Baseball has the stage till the fall by itself.
I think that
put it right here, and you've got a shot.
I think you also need some type of affiliation though with the NFL.
Oh yeah, make it some sort of unofficial minor league, or like the NFL, each team off their 90-man preseason roster or whatever can designate 15 guys that they can loan to the the XFL or the NFL minor league or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Whatever that ends up being, Where the NFL, you know what? Hey guys, team here, you know what? Your biggest initial expenses is actually going to be player salaries. Those 15 guys, they're on loan. They'll be paid by the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to worry about those salaries. Put those guys down there where you can see them in game action. Hell, I mean, if you got a 4th-string QB who you just picked up as an undrafted free agent, you like to see some live bullets thrown at him. Option him or loan him to the XFL. With the agreement and the understanding that, hey, XFL team from Albuquerque, he's going to play or I ain't sending him there. Or, you don't need... You can do stuff like that. I mean, look at the loan system and the loan system, especially of like professional soccer throughout the world. When players are loaned, they aren't paid by their parent club; they're paid by the team that takes them on. But in the financial position of the NFL versus, say, the XFL or the AAF, if it were to come back, the NFL could pay, hell, even if it's like $15,000 for a 6-week season. The NFL can afford that.
Yeah.
Per $15,000 per guy. And it would be worth it to most of these teams to learn more about these fringe prospects that they would option or loan or offer to play in that league.
All right. Yeah, I agree. I mean, but let's rehash all of this next week though, because interesting stuff coming up here. But I don't want to get too far past what we're talking about right now, and that's the draft and eliminating the draft and incentives and threats and shit like that. But like I said, NFL has no incentive to do this. As far as the NHL and MLB, in some sense, the NBA is concerned, that they may have a little bit more incentive to do this as far as competing for prospects, especially the NHL, because you deal with the KHL, and that's legitimate, and in some sense the Swedish elite league.
It's not even that, like with the NHL, but the time that the elite prospects spend in the minor leagues in the NHL is none in some cases.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, the elite prospects in Major League Baseball at least spend a year or two in the minor leagues. The elite prospects in the NBA don't, because, they just don't.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you got teams taking guys in the first round. They play like 15 games a year and spend most of the year in the G League.
Mm-hmm.
They play mop-up minutes in 15 games a year. And if that's the case, like, why wouldn't you, if you're kind of like a guy that would be in the NBA, traditionally drafted in like the teens to 20s, would I rather go to a good team where I'm never going to play this year and I'm going to spend my time bouncing back and forth within the G League or DNP coaches' decisions when I'm up in the NBA or the G League? Would I rather take potentially less money or the same money and go to a bad team where, I'm going to play. I'm going to play and I'm going to show that I can hang in the NBA and I'm going to earn that second contract? I think that it would be, at the same time, it would also eliminate, like, teams paying guys like, I hate to say it, but the Pistons, prime examples here, John Lure, Langston Galloway, and Boban Marjanovic, upwards of $7 to $12 million a year just because we got to spend that money. They can spend that money on younger players who actually will, be around when they're ready to win again. Instead of, we got to spend this money, so, here's a fringe player who barely deserves to be in the league. I'm going to give him $8 million a year because.
Yeah. Yep. I don't know. I thought that this was an interesting topic, and it's probably never going to happen. But you won me over a little bit more with this tonight, Dorf, because at first, I mean, like I said, I just thought it was an interesting topic to bring up, but now I am more on board with it, and it's a very kind of socially democratic take you have on all of it too, Dorf.
It's not even socially. I would argue it's a capitalist take, because, like, why the fuck should I just be able to, have to have my hat thrown in the lottery and not being able to pick where I want to work?
That's why I said socially democratic, because socially democratic is still working within the constraints of capitalism.
Yeah, okay. We can have that argument on another show.
Which is coming up next week.
Yeah, ironically, next Tuesday, 8 o'clock on Eastern on Tuesday, we discuss socialism and everything with Adam, I, and Josh Auslander on Politics of the Empire, right here on theempiremedia.com.
Yeah, so
shameless plug.
So stay tuned for that. Let's go ahead and move along and kind of get things closed out here tonight. Our stupid shit of the week this week kind of stems from last week as well, when the Cleveland Cavaliers and Dan Gilbert came in and swooped John Beeline out from his maize and blue 90s and took him down to Cleveland, and he became the new head coach of the Cleveland Cavaliers. Just out of nowhere, according to Wojo, this happened. Everything kind of transcended that weekend, and things really started to pick up that weekend with John Beeline and the Cleveland Cavaliers. But anyways, that's last week's news. What I thought was, a strong candidate for stupid shit of the week this week was Mike Valenti, a radio host, a sports radio host here in the Detroit area.
PM Drive.
PM Drive.
Detroit.
Yep. He was blaming Beeline's departure on Jim Harbaugh, saying that Beeline couldn't top Jim Harbaugh. Harbaugh takes all the air, and I'll go ahead and read the quote from him. I think he was very frustrated the last couple of years, Valenti said about Beeline. I mean, coaching at Michigan as the basketball coach is a huge challenge, especially with Harbaugh there, because he takes all the air. And this is an article, too, from 971.com, where he says, case in point, when Harbaugh arrived to watch Michigan fight its way through the Sweet 16, Harb sat courtside and talked, and they actually say Harbs, and talked to the media about his team's trip to South Africa. He couldn't even give him that moment in the sun. Well, wasn't it the media that goes and talks to Jim Harbaugh at that point? I mean, I'm sure Jim Harbaugh wasn't sitting there, yanking on the reporter's sleeve there, asking him for an interview. I'm sure the interviewer came up to him and asked him that question. In his face. Yeah. Hey, tell us about your trip to South Africa. Tell us about about the Michigan football team this offseason. They go on. Apparently not. The moment where Harbaugh gets interviewed live on television while Beeline has a meltdown about a play, gesturing wildly, face contorted in despair, went viral. Harbaugh became the story of Beeline's game. Not really. And then Valenti goes on to say, you've got to be wired way differently if that doesn't grate on you, Valenti said. And I don't know. I just think that this is Michigan State guy and Mike Valenti, who doesn't like Jim Harbaugh. And I fully admit, too, I'm not a Jim Harbaugh fan myself.
I don't even, I haven't listened to Mike Valenti once since I relocated or whatever, but the fact of the matter is, I don't think Mike doesn't like John Beeline. I think he actually respects the shit out of him.
How can you not?
Doesn't like Jim Harbaugh. It's one of those don't hate the player, hate the game type situations where he respects Harbaugh, the football coach. He just doesn't respect Harbaugh, the media circus.
And that's fine. I don't respect Harbaugh, the media circus either.
John Beeline, if that was such a big deal, he wouldn't have stuck around for the 4 years of overlap they had.
Yeah.
I think he's interviewed for NBA jobs before, pick a Division I program outside of maybe Duke, and hell, you can't even really argue anybody other than that. If John Beeline really, said that, you know what, I really want to coach at Kansas before I retire. Mm-hmm. Bill Self would have been fired and been unemployed in 5 minutes if John Beeline publicly expressed I think Kansas's job is kind of intriguing. I'd like to coach there before I retire.
Yeah.
Well, the idea that John Beeline left because it was second fiddle, I just, I think that's one of those that's going to end up on that Old Takes Exposed, Twitter account,
And even you said it too before we went on the air tonight, Dorf, was that just doesn't seem like it's John Beeline's nature.
No, John Beeline has never sought the spotlight or went glory hounding since he got here, or that I can see ever. I just don't understand why. Now, he is a media personality. There's likeliness he has connections with people within the program, whatever that means, or the station has connections with the people within the Michigan athletic department, where it might be an informed opinion where he can't put the name of the source he put on record because, expose them once and you'll never get them again. But unless of course this came out of a unnamed or confidential source, I don't see how logic leads you to that perspective.
But wouldn't we hear about that more though, too, Dorf? I mean, if that was in fact
he wasn't the only one to say it. It wasn't a big popular thing in the national media pundits, but if you look at it specifically in the local and the Detroit media market, he wasn't the only one who brought that up. He was just the biggest one to bring it up.
I just have a hard time believing something like this, considering this wasn't a horizontal move for Beeline. I mean, it's not like he's going from Michigan.
It's a financial upgrade. I know that.
No, it definitely is, and I would say too, there's less stress on a John Beeline going from Michigan.
Well, he's a man in his mid-60s. He just got a 5-year guaranteed deal.
Yeah.
He's never going to have to work again in his life.
No.
If they fire him after this year, he's never going to have to work again if he doesn't want to.
No, and they're not going to fire him after this year. I mean, we all know.
You don't know that. This is the NBA.
Yeah, that's true. And you're speaking of
Players
Dan Gilbert,
League.
too, Dan
Gilbert in the Players League.
Yeah, I mean, I can't stand. I think Dan Gilbert isn't a very good owner. I know there's a lot of people in the Detroit area that like him just because he tends to spend money, but I don't like him. I think he's way too invested in parts of the team that he has no business investing himself in. And I know he's the owner, but I don't care. I think when you're an owner of a team, I think that there's certain aspects that you need to take a hands-off approach on.
He fired David Griffin after going back-to-back, NBA championship series.
And he's running
fired his general manager.
And he's running his mouth about LeBron again. It's just like, shut up, dude. Shut up. Nobody wants to hear from you, or...
You know what? And honestly, I'll take the passion, though. Because I'd rather have that than, Martha Ford or Chris Ilitch. Right now, if I'm a Detroit fan, I'd much rather have that.
Yeah. But, like I was saying, it's not in Beeline's nature. This isn't. At
least now that we've seen, neither of us have ever spoken to the
what I was saying though too is this isn't a horizontal move. He's going from. I mean, it's a financially better situation for himself. He takes the stress of having to go on the road to recruit and having to deal with all the politics involved when it comes to not just the fans at the University of Michigan, which you and I know, Dorf, have seen firsthand what that's like. But you're not dealing with the alumni, you're not dealing with the athletic department, you're not dealing with boosters and shit like that. I mean, when you go to the NBA, you don't have to go on the road to recruit. You leave that up to your,
that's your general manager's job.
Yeah, that's your general manager's job. You're just there to coach.
It ain't even recruiting at that point. It's drafting.
No, and at that point too, the biggest thing that you have to deal with in the NBA are the egos. But that's not to say
you still have to manage that in college.
You do. I mean,
the power dynamic's different, but it's not like you don't have to deal with that in the college game.
No, and that's true. I mean, we've heard about the shit that he's had, was going on between him and Jordan Poole, thinking that he's worth much more than he is, and he should be, he should be contributing more to the team, which I think it's going to be funny if Jordan Poole somehow ends
Poole's not going to get drafted.
No, he's not. But it'd be funny though if he somehow
ends up in Cleveland.
Yeah, if he finds his way to Cleveland. But
I think I understand why him and Iggy Brastakis have gone to it's stuck in the draft, but like there's a pretty good chance any of those guys gets picked.
No, I look. You know what? Do what you need to do. I just think it's the wrong move. I really do.
I understand, especially from Poole's perspective. You don't want to come back like with only a year. I think 2 years of eligibility left with, new coach and potentially new offensive system, and all of a sudden you find yourself on the outside looking in, and your draft stock tanks. But draft stock wasn't that good to begin with because realistically, he's not an above 40% 3-point shooter, and that's all he does. So I don't know.
Anyways, though, Dorf, let's go ahead and move on to our bitches and badasses to close things out for the night. Who's your badass this week, Dorf?
My badass this week is actually going to be the Houston Astros as a team. They're going through the meat of their schedule, and they just don't lose. I think they've won something like 13 out of the last 15 games, and they're not just winning games, they're just beating the shit out of people. Justin Verlander had a no-hitter going late into the game yesterday. They moved a solid starter in Colin McHugh to the bullpen because they have a prospect that's just that good. And, oh, by the way, there's another one who's like 20 who's in AAA already that could probably bounce one of their guys out of the rotation already. They're loaded for bear for years to come. They're beating the shit out of people now. They're already at like a plus 100 run differential this year, which is like a good year for a pretty normal team. And it's only May. So that's why they're going to be, and they're doing this all without Jose Altuve too. So
they're definitely not missing Dallas Keuchel.
No.
My badass this week are the Golden State Warriors going to another NBA final, awaiting on the winner of the Milwaukee Bucks Toronto Raptors series, which is now tied at 2 games apiece. Actually, the Milwaukee Bucks losing the other night was only the second time all season that they've lost back-to-back games. So,
wow.
That just goes to show how good the Milwaukee...
The NBA is just a joke?
I guess so, but you know what? It's good to see the Milwaukee Bucks actually doing something, and
it's good
and making it this far.
It only took them like 15 decades.
Yeah, I know, but given the way that the NBA has been conducting itself, I mean, who would have thought that the Milwaukee Bucks would be in the Eastern Conference Finals? At this point.
At the beginning,
I know. They've developed themselves into a very, very good team. Obviously, yeah. But 2 years ago, would anybody bet on the Milwaukee Bucks being in the Eastern Conference Finals right now and being the best team in the NBA?
Honestly, if you look at just like the potential of the team, I might have, but I wouldn't have put a lot of money on it.
All right.
At the same time, like until this year, LeBron was still in the East, and I wouldn't have bet it against him.
Bitch, Dorf, go ahead.
My bitch this week is going to be actually Major League Baseball for the exact reason we talked about. You lost a top-type prospect to a foreign league because you have a culture of teams being cheap asses. This isn't the first time that we've taken a prospect. Teams have taken a prospect and we found something worrisome. Specifically, the Baltimore Orioles are notorious for this. Like, we don't like your MRI, so we're gonna downgrade your deal like 90%. Your draft system is broken. Your service time system is broken. This is just a microcosm of the larger problem. Fucking fix it.
All right.
I understand. I'm not mad at the individual teams for tanking, but like, if you don't want this to happen, you want people to actually show up at the ballpark. Incentivize teams to go for it all every year.
All right. Yeah. And you made all of that. You made your position very, very well known in the last or 2 segments ago tonight. My bitch is the Michigan Wolverines basketball team going out, signing Juwan Howard today to
below market deal, by the way.
Yeah, to become your new head coach. 5-year deal, I believe.
5 years and like $10 million.
Yeah, I don't get it. I mean, I don't get it. There's still plenty of time this offseason to try to hash out a deal with somebody more.
Do you still have that old soundboard that we had?
I'd have to go.
Do you have you still have the Brady Hoke? This is Michigan for God's sake sounder.
This is Michigan. That's somewhere. I'd have to go look for
this
it.
is Michigan for God's sakes. You've made 2 Final Fours in like the last 5 years. Like the fact that
and Juwan Howard is
Howard
is the best you can do.
Is the best you can get. I understand that it's like kind of late in the process and you need to hurry up and get somebody signed, but like
you still had time though.
The fact that you like couldn't afford to like peel away a like higher level coach than an NBA assistant. Yeah, he's an NBA assistant who interviewed for a couple head coach jobs this year, but the fact that that's what you settled for less than a week, like a week later, that's small time move.
You know what though?
That's not big time program move.
You know what though, too, Dorf? I mean, you go, you wait, you take as long as you need to take to find the right guy. And you know what? Maybe
this isn't just a decision for this. Maybe Juwan Howard's the guy.
Maybe
this
he is
isn't
the
just
guy.
a decision for this year. This is the decision for if you do it right the next 2 decades.
Yeah, and if you have to throw away next season because you're late in trying to sign guys and whatnot.
Yeah, John, no offense, but John Bean fucked you.
Yeah,
like that's the reality of the situation.
Yeah, that's the reality of the situation
if you need to throw away next season for the long-term next 2-decade health of the program, that's the cost of doing business. That's what you got to do.
Yeah, but going out and signing a guy who is extremely unproven. Yeah, he's been the assistant at Miami. Who cares?
Who, by the way, during his tenure has been terrible.
I don't like this. I didn't like them talking with Ed Cooley at all either.
By the way, Ed Cooley is the coach at Providence. He's not even the biggest state university in the smallest state geographically in the fucking union. And you can't even afford. And your job isn't even enticing enough to hire him away from Providence.
Yeah, I don't know. This wasn't a good go around of things for Ward Manuel, athletic director at University of Michigan.
But honestly, you can't even say like the Jim Harbaugh hire was like a good go around for him because Jim just got fired by the NFL. He probably wasn't going to get a head coach job immediately there. Like, coming home to the alma mater and he bent you over as a university and took all the money out of the piggy bank. It's not like you got like a hometown discount for him coming home. Like Ward Manuel, your 2 biggest coaching hires, I mean, you haven't aced.
No.
It's not what you want out of a big-time athletic director. I'm sorry.
No, and you being a Michigan State guy, Dorf, does Juwan Howard strike any fear in you at all?
Absolutely not. This dude's never been a head coach at any level. He's never shown the ability to recruit. It's late in the process, and he's got connections in Chicago. You know what that's a recipe for? NCAA recruiting sanctions. So there's a reason Michigan State doesn't recruit Chicago, because they don't pay people.
At least Michigan didn't go after Pitino, though.
Isn't he coaching like professionally Italy or something?
Italy or Greece or something like that. Something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
But I mean, they were going on there talking about, they made offers. They checked the how Brad Stevens was doing in Boston, if he was happy there, or Billy Donovan in Oklahoma City, and they both said no, which I can respect them, going and at least asking. But again, you don't get turned down by them because you knew they weren't going to.
Well, at the same time, like you're the university of Michigan. Like you can at least get them to pick up the phone and be like, "Hey, Billy, let's be real here. I got a job opening. Any interest? No, man, I'm good. All right, cool. You're not getting hung up on."
Yeah.
And that's fine, because you know what, your job, most jobs in the NCAA, there's probably 4 or 5 jobs that are more prestigious or more worth it to a professional coach than any NBA job. You ain't one of those 4. With that being said, you you, you didn't get hung up on, at least, and that's okay. But the fact that you settled, it seems like you're settling for Juwan Howard.
No, it absolutely does. I don't know. I mean, I would have thought that they would have. And I don't know if they asked Laval Jordan if he was gonna come back. I know he hasn't had the best go around at Butler right now, but he is a John Beilein guy, and I don't know. I mean, at least he has some head coaching experience at the college level. I mean, Juwan Howard has no head coaching experience, none, zip,
None ever.
none, and nothing at the college level as well either. I mean, Laval Jordan has that, and Laval Jordan is playing in a very, very competitive conference in college basketball in the Big East. So I don't know. It just like I said, or like you said, Dorf. I mean, it just seems like Michigan settled. They're going for the sentiment here and getting a Fab Five guy back. And,
Well, at least they didn't go with like, oh, we're gonna hire Jalen Rose out of the broadcast booth.
yeah.
It's not even the broadcast booth; it's the hot take commentator.
Yeah.
At least they're not doing that. A guy who hasn't coached at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway.
Chris, what were your thoughts had it been Chris Webber?
Oh God.
Would you have keeled over dead from laughing?
Oh, that would have been. I could guarantee you we would have been talking about that tonight as opposed to the draft thing. But,
Chris Webber.
Oh man, it would have made for good podcasting.
Honestly, I think it would have been I know he's turned down NBA assistant jobs or whatever, and I think he's coaching high school ball in North Carolina. But it would have been a great hire, I think, in my opinion.
Rasheed Wallace.
Yes. Rasheed.
Oh man! Instead of
Just imagine Rasheed and Tom Izzo shaking hands. There's over a foot difference in height there. That'd be hilarious.
Well, and instead of recruiting violations, you'd have Sheed getting high with his players.
Ball the line. hey, I know, son. Your shooting stroke. You're really struggling right now, but ball the line.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we'll ever see Sheed in the college ranks. I know he was an assistant under was it Van Gundy for like one season with the Pistons, but that
was like a part-time job too. He apparently turned down NBA assistant jobs to like coach like high school ball in North Carolina.
Oh really?
At the same time, if he's got FU money and
he probably does,
with the commitment of like an NBA, the grind of an NBA 82 game season, go coach a 25, 30 game high school season, and you still get your basketball fix. And if you're not doing it for the money, who cares?
No, I agree. Yeah.
How do you think Rasheed recruiting visits would go?
Oh my God, that would be. I mean that would probably be something that you'd want to see.
That'd be good
on reality television, right?
Yeah. Do we do it all Amazon All or Nothing special on instead of Jim Harbaugh and the Michigan Wolverines? We do Sheed Wallace and his high school basketball team.
That would be fun. I'll
tell you what. I actually watched the Arizona Cardinals one, All or Nothing. I still haven't made it through any of the other ones, but that was interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I gotta check it out. What do you think is gonna be the?
Oh no, I know. I watched the LA Rams one. I just started the Cardinals one. That's what it is.
Do you think that the lines are gonna be Hard Knocks this year?
I'd like them to be.
They're like one of four teams that are going to be.
They've dodged it. Like they've been on the list like 4 or 5 years straight, and they've dodged it every time.
I think out of the teams that they are considering, or that are the four teams that have to be in it, from what I can remember, it seems like they would be the most interesting.
I honestly, I think I would like, I don't know if the Browns are on the list. I think I'd like to see.
I think the Browns already did it. Yeah, the Browns already did it.
I don't care